I'm Joseph Gregory Hallett, introducing Dr. Stephen Young, who's just written this book, A Fool's Wisdom. And I've read the first 30 pages, and it's good and gripping. He's got a really good stream of consciousness. He's got a doctorate. He's got a Ph.D. in theoretical physics, which means his mind is trained, and he appears actually to be able to read, which most people can't. There's 8 different levels of reading. Most people read to level 1. Professors generally read to level 2. And those who can actually read can read up to level 8, which is really deconstructing the language so that you don't read what you think the author is trying to say. You actually read what the author says. And you actually see that sometimes what the traditional authors say is the opposite of what you believe to be true and what you believe them to be saying. So what we've found now is that Stephen Young has finished his doctorate in theoretical physics, completely rejected it for 20 years, become a DJ, etc. And we're now looking at a criticism of theoretical physics. And we've just chatted for an hour, which is what we should have recorded. And in that, we covered a lot of ground and came up with this neon banner called Bullshit for Everything. And so now we're going to go blow by blow on whatever topics come up. And there might be several of these videos, hopefully. And we might actually have some of Stephen's fellow scientists who are also highly critical of scientism, which is a cult of fake science projected onto the public so that we can have something to fear and pay more tax based on that fear and their protection, which is entirely ineffective, so that we can live in a delirium of fear, with fear being the government's projected God onto us. Fear God. So, Stephen, over to you. Say something.
Well, thanks so much, Greg. This has all happened so quickly. You know, I just commented on one of your videos. I think it was on May 6th. Offered to send you the book, and then lo and behold, you reach out to me, and now we're talking like we're old friends, catching up. So forgive me if I'm a little shell-shocked. It is all just happening very quickly, but I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, and thank you for that great introduction.
Good. There might have been a faulted introduction. I think I said it was the 10th of April. It's the 10th of May.
10th of May, yes. Yeah.
So good. So what I really like about this book is between pages 17 and 21, it mentions me. And it talks about my claim and proof. I've got 13 books out on the proof of being King John III of the Kingdom of England, King of the Kingdom of England, and also refers to New Zealand Blackmailer's Guide, where I completely lambasted the New Zealand government and judiciary, which I wrote in 2007. And what I'm finding now is that people with PhDs are agreeing with me that governments are just this giant crime syndicate. They're just mafia operations selling fear and taxing us on fear. Yeah?
Yeah, well, your New Zealand book was the first one I got into. I mean, I'd seen some of your videos online at that point, and you know, I recognized the truth kind of flowing out of you. Like everything I watched, there was like I was learning something new, and I thought I've got to read some of your work. So I bought the New Zealand book, and that was a huge red pill moment. I mean, there was a lot of red pills happening in 2020, but that for me was one of the big ones. Really, just shows you just how corrupt these governments are and how they operate, and it really helped me to see, you know, see through what was going on, you know, at the time, and this whole idea of counterintelligence, which, you know, if you're an intellectual person, you kind of value the quality of intelligence, and you're led to believe that it's something that's a virtue, and that, you know, there's merit in being intelligent. So it becomes as quite a shock when you realize there's actually this counterintelligence that's actually pushing against that with lies, deceptions, you know, falsehoods, and just theories, false theories that are upheld purely for purposes of control and fear mongering. But when you really try to analyze the science and question them, they're just they're built on very shaky foundations that just fall apart. So yeah, it took me about 20 years after my PhD to really kind of wrap my head around it, and the whole pandemic situation was a big kind of catalyst in helping me to kind of zoom out from all this science. It's like a sort of 300-400 years of thought, certain theories that are all kind of put together into this worldview we call scientism, which is the primary thrust of all education, as far as I can tell, in the West. Primary, secondary, and higher university education is all coming from the same like theoretical basis, which has essentially just been created in the last few hundred years from a cherry-picked selection of theories and experiments. And so another thing that kind of helped me to awaken sort of earlier was learning about alchemy. As I started reading about alchemy and reading old alchemical books from the 1600s and stuff, and the old Hermetic wisdom, I was getting so much truth from it that it started to make my education just seem like more and more ridiculous, just like this modern construct that I'd been indoctrinated with. And so with the book, I mean, I really wanted to show people that like everything in creation can be explained without invoking any theories or experts, right? It's like, everything in creation has a name, the elements, fire, earth, air, and water, everything has properties, and alchemy had names for everything and explanations for everything, all the processes, the life, the body, the soul, the spirit. It's a science, but it's also spiritual, whereas the science we're given at school has no spiritual component. It has the spirit and the soul are removed, and we're all just bodies. There's no God, no spirit, no soul. You're all just bodies, and it's evolution. You came from apes and all this, and yeah, it's just alchemy just showed me that everything can just be explained in familiar terms without invoking theoretical particles and idols and experts and all this kind of thing. It's like it's all right there.
I thought Einstein was a turd.
Yeah. Yeah, so
that's what you said, Jarby. At the same time, we had the separation of church and state, and that might be the separation of body and soul.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. And the collective, by separating the church and state, that's like, separating the body and soul. So I was always interested in science and spirituality, and I found that like actually with my science friends, were totally uncomfortable with anything to say about spirituality. But then as I also found, I met more spiritual people who were just way out there and, perhaps not so comfortable with more like grounded science. And so I was all trying to hold that middle line between the two worlds, as it were. And alchemy just really brought it together, and showed that, yes, science is spiritual. The true science is spiritual. We've just been given like this shadow, this distorted scientism.
So you call it scientism. There's also historicism, where we have this projected thing, like from 1973, from the really hot summer when Runnymede dried out, they started to project the Magna Carta as being based in Runnymede because they'd built 9 dams and funneled out 134 million cubic meters of water a day, had a really hot summer, which was early climate change arranged, and then dried it out enough for it to be believable. We've also got historicism. So I studied some of the ancient texts, the alchemic texts, and that had how to age cotton, how to age wool, how to age ink, right? And from that knowledge was brought out from, it was in ancient books in the Aegean, biblical books in the Aegean, and then it was brought to France, and then it was basically stolen off the old guy who found it, the old reverend who found it, and they just kept him in rags for the last 10 years of his life and brought him to these lavish dinner parties dressed in rags, right? And they took his books off him, which was How to Create the Bayeux Tapestry and Make It Look Old.
Mm.
Right? So they created the Bayeux Tapestry between 1719 and 1727 and then backdated it to, I don't know, 1066, 1070, 1090, the 1100s, 1150, you know, all these dates that could have happened, you know, but they backdated the entire document, right? Now, they also backdated the Magna Carta, so that's more historicism. And
so it's like writing things into history after the fact that weren't there.
It's called habilitation, right, which is a Jesuit word, and the Jesuits were right behind habilitation. So the value of a document was not the document itself, but where it was found.